We're talking today with Edward Ramon of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. All right. Ed was, among other things, a helicopter pilot in his military career, and as such, he served as a cavalryman, and that's why he's sporting a cavalry hat here. It's also got his captain's bars, and then you've got, now what are the wings on the hat for?
Those are senior Army aviator wings.
Okay.
I was a senior Army aviator.
All right. Okay. And now you can take the hat off because it's shading your eyes a little. All right.
I'll put on my other hat. I don't have my hair combed.
Okay. Well, it shades your eyes a little bit. Which
Oh, it does?
Yeah. So, okay, that's better. Okay. Now, let's begin at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
I was born in San Antonio, Texas, during World War II. I was born at Fort Sam Houston.
Okay. And was your father in the military?
My daddy was a gunner's mate in the United States Navy in the South Pacific, and he served the duration of the war.
Okay. Now, you have other relatives or ancestors who were
Oh yes,
in as
quite
well.
a few.
Talk about your grandfathers.
Well, my Comanche grandfather was Marshal Shoko, and he was killed in France 4 days before the end of the war. Had another grandfather. He was 14 years old. He was in the horse-drawn artillery in France. He survived the war. He served in World War II in the U.S. Army Air Corps, which became the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
So he stayed with them and became Air Force, and he served in Korea with the Air Force. So he served, he got his share. Had uncles that were infantrymen and combat medics, World War II mostly, in Korea, and several cousins that were Marines. They were all killed in Korea. So, quite a family.
Okay. Now, when you were growing up, what kind of job did your father have?
My daddy was a employee at the Lone Star Ordnance in Texarkana. He started out there as in the paint department, ended up in security. His principal occupation was after he got off work. He was sort of a handyman, built houses, kitchen cabinets. He worked his butt off. He was a hard-working man.
All right. And then, did you go to high school in San Antonio?
No, we moved to DeKalb, Texas, up northeast corner of Texas.
Okay, so
when
that's
I was about 3.
Okay, all right, because your
That's
father worked up there.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
My mother's father owned a farm up there, and when he passed, my young mother, my young daddy, and my baby brother and my sister, we moved up there, and that's where I grew up.
Right, okay. And then, when did you finish high school?
May of 1960.
Okay. And what did you do after high school?
Well, knocked around. There wasn't much for me to do. I hauled hay and I worked and I did a few little things. And that fall I got a scholarship, football scholarship. My father couldn't afford to send me to school because he elected to send my sister.
Mm-hmm.
She was a very hard worker. I was kind of like a wild kid. So Dad decided to invest what little he had into my sister's education.
Okay.
He was pleased that I got a football scholarship.
Okay. And what school did you go to?
Texarkana Junior College.
Okay.
We were national champions, junior college champions. Tough football team.
All right. And then what happened to you after you started college?
Well, I broke my leg. My girlfriend dumped me. My little brother wrecked my car. And my 2 best buddies joined the Army. So I followed along. I joined the Army.
All right.
And I reported for basic training at Fort Hood, Texas, on January the 17th.
All right. Now to back up a little bit, when your friends joined, how exactly did they do that?
Oh, back then you could volunteer for the draft, and they would draft you, and you would do a 2-year hitch and get out. If you enlisted in the Army, it was 3 years. If you enlisted in the Marine Corps or the Navy or whatever, it was 4 years. So I thought it was appealing to do 2 years to find out what it was like and continue my education. GI Bill.
Yep.
But they were trying to, they wanted to send me right before Christmas. I said, no, I don't want to go before it. And so this shrewd recruiting officer, he said, well, you can enlist. And so I did.
Okay.
And I started my career.
All right. And so where did you go for basic training?
Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay. And what was basic training like in 1961?
A little different from it is today. I showed up at Fort Hood about 3 o'clock in the morning. And there were dirt trails, tank trails, wooden barracks with windows broken out. And I've been traveling all night, got there at 3 in the morning. When I got there, I still had on civilian clothes. They put me on KP. No kidding. And I was on KP for 11 hours, peeling potatoes, washing pots and pans, and then we got put into the barracks. They issued us our clothing and stuff. And it was tough. We did forced marches, lots of calisthenics, and our corporal was God. So you imagine what a sergeant was or a lieutenant. So it was an eye opener, and I wanted to make my uncles and grandfather and my dad proud. So I stood up. And I was sharp.
Okay. All right. And how long did the basic training last?
Basic training was 8 weeks, about 8 weeks. Then from there you go to advanced individual training. I went to infantry center at Fort Ord, California,
Okay.
and did I think about 8-10 weeks there.
All right. Now, how was the advanced training different from basic?
Well, you've been a soldier for 2 months. You've learned how to behave yourself and most of it's academic pursuit. So it's not really a challenge to what, if you're Rambo or not. It's just, can I teach you something? And then during this time, you were always wondering where you're going to end up, where you're going to go. So while I was at Fort Ord, California, I went on to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, and took finance training. I thought, that sounds pretty good. You don't have to walk around in the hot sun, So I completed that. That was about, I think 4 weeks or 8 weeks. I can't remember. So they sent me to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. I thought that was great. Go back to my old country, I got there. 566 Ambulance Company, 82nd, 37th Strike Medical Battalion, 82nd Airborne, and they didn't need a finance clerk. They had one, So I was sitting there, private. So they decided they're going to make me a combat medic, a 910 and 911, what was the MOS. So I became a medic, and that was interesting. I was oriented towards that kind of stuff.
Okay. So what were they actually teaching you?
I'm sorry?
What were they teaching you?
Oh, quite a bit, really, for, just to be an enlisted corpsman or a medic. Life-saving things, heart functions, bleeding, stop the bleeding, elevate this, tourniquet that, blah, blah. Chemical warfare, anthraquinone injections, but a lot of it was just APCs, aspirins, and drinking water and treat the blisters. That was a bad thing about being a medic. You had to carry extra water because these other guys that drank all theirs, and yeah, you had to give them some of yours. And water's heavy. So I decided we had a battalion. Part of our mission was to put on combat exercises, and the doctors sat on their butts up in a bleacher, and that's how they got their basic. They watched us fight. We had casualties, and we'd put them in the litters and carry them to these old cracker box field ambulances and take them to sortie stations, and they get set up there, and they watched all this. So that's what I ended up being. I was an infantryman. I was a machine gunner, shooting. I was one of the bad guys, and so I shoot at all the guys coming up the hill, and they had a pit right behind me with a dummy in it, and then these fighters would come over from the Air Force Base, and they'd set off these charges. So I'd bounce off the ground, eat up with a mouthful of dirt, and then I'd have to pick up all my brass and get stung on the butt by scorpions and crap and go back down. That was part of my PFC job. That was it,
So how long did you do that?
Oh, from 61, half of 61 on up to, I left Fort Sam Houston in January 64, February 64. But I went on the Cuban crisis with the 82nd. We showed up at Opelika, Florida. My company struck with the battalion. We showed up in Opelika, and it was kind of like, up till that point, I'd been painting fences and hiding from the first sergeant, and now it looked like this is what it's all about, that we're going to war. And I was back being a medic. I had this little pack of crap, and I said, how the hell am I going to save somebody's life with this stuff? And I was scheduled with a third wave to go over the shore, and a third wave would be, very high casualties. And so what are you going to do, You're going to lay out there on the beach and treat guys and get shot yourself? What you going to do? What you going to do? And I was a brand new father. I was 19 years old, had a little baby boy. And I think that's when I became a soldier. I realized I wouldn't listen to Grandpa or Uncle Glenn or none of that. It was, here you are, boy, here's your job, you're going to do it. And they had to bear pigs, how tragic that was. But I had an uncle at Normandy invasion, Uncle Charlie, Chabidi. And he was the last living Comanche coat toker. He died a few years back. And he was a funny guy. He's tough. He's a boxer, little guy.
All right. Okay. So for you, you spend several years at Fort Sam Houston. You're a medic. I'm just reviewing a little bit. So you spent several years at Fort Sam Houston.
No, not 7.
Well, several.
Several, yeah.
Like 3.
Couple, yes.
Yeah. And then you went to Florida briefly at the time of the missile crisis.
Oh, yeah, but that was just for the crisis.
Right.
I went back to
Right.
Fort Sam Houston.
Yeah. Okay.
And then January of 64, my 3-year enlistment was up. So here I was, 20 years old, and had a baby on the way, had no idea what I could do for a living. That wasn't too good when I left. I didn't think that'd be much when I went back. So I guess my family, my daddy was not military, but I decided I'd make a military career. So I enlisted, and I asked to go to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, infantry center there. When I got there, I had a hearing impairment from a hand grenade blast. And so I applied for this Defense Information School. And they teach you how to report things, how to write things, how to do things. And so I was selected, and I was sent to the. And right before I was supposed to go at Fort Slocum, New York, they called me and told me they'd cancel my orders. Well, why? Well, you have a hearing profile, H3 hearing profile from this grenade. Oh God, you know, so I said, well, can I go take another hearing test? And the authority said, yeah, sure. So I went down to the hospital, sat there, I took this hearing test, and I marginally passed. So now I was off to Fort Slocum. Wonderful school, really a good school. Went to Fort Slocum. I was E5 already. I made E5 pretty fast. Mm-hmm. So while I was at Fort Slocum doing all this stuff, I said, oh, I had applied for flight school and was turned down for my hearing. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, maybe I ought to apply for flight school again. I got home to Fort Jackson, and I did. Mm-hmm. And I scored very high on the tests and things. They sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. You know Fort Bragg. Went over to Simmons Field, and they flew you around on an orientation ride to see if you get airsick or vomit or, you know, wet your pants or what you was going to do. So I enjoyed the orientation flight, so that I passed that. I did really good on all the testing, and I went to take the physical, passed it. So yeah, there was a waiting period to go to flight school, and they sent me right away, right on. So this was all like in December of '64.
Okay.
In January '65, I was in flight school.
Okay. Now, was this flight school for fixed wing aircraft or for helicopters?
Rotor wing.
Okay, helicopters.
So I went from Fort Bragg, Fort Jackson. I went to Fort Wolters, Texas. Little facility. I think they were active during World War II or something, but they were they had become now the primary helicopter training center. It's where you go for your primary. So I reported to Fort Wolters, Texas, and they taught me how to fly a helicopter. And when I finished that portion of the program, they sent me to Fort Rucker. Fort Rucker, Alabama is for your advanced helicopter training.
Okay, now, to back up a little bit, you said they taught you how to fly a helicopter.
Yes.
How easy or hard was that?
Well, I was a pretty good athlete. I was agile and ambidextrous, and I thought I was a stud, you know, and I was cool. And I looked at the literature and stuff. Helicopter, that's easy. You push the stick forward, you go forward. Pull it back, you go backwards, you know, left to right. You want to turn around, you step on one of the pedals and you turn around. If you want to go up, you just pull up and down on this collected. Oh, that's easy. Hell, anybody do that. I remember my first flight. Mr. Reeves was my flight instructor. I'll never forget him. And took me on this rifle range, big open field, a helicopter. We're sitting in a helicopter just like this, you know. And he said, okay, you take the cyclic. So I took the cyclic, and we started going, no, this. And then he said, okay, you take the pedals. So we started going right and left like that, spinning. And he said, now you got the collective. So we're going up and down, round and around. It's like, I remember getting on that bus going back to barracks. And I said, there ain't no way in hell I'll ever fly one of these things. There ain't no way. There ain't no way. And I looked around the bus and everybody else had their lip down in the dirt. We'd all learned that this was complicated. So by little increments, we began to bring it down where we could control it. make matters worse, we flew Hillers, H-23s. Worst helicopter ever designed. It's just a piece of junk. And you really had to work to fly the thing. But that's what I learned flying.
Okay.
And if you didn't solo pretty damn quick, you get washed out. They didn't cut you no slack. You better catch on quick. I was probably the worst helicopter pilot student ever had in the military. But I made it. Over half of them didn't make it, so I made it down near the bottom of my class, but I made it, you know.
Right. Now, did they have a lot of accidents?
No, we had very few, no accidents, no
Okay.
fatal accidents.
All right.
Then,
Okay.
but later on, they started having a few because they were just pushing everybody through. Anybody that could fog up a mirror could graduate, you know.
Okay.
And we had a lot of cowboys, what you call cowboys. These are Vietnam veteran pilots that they were good pilots, but they didn't teach good, safe, steady practice. They were kind of like wild boys. So they were training guys, and they had one of my friends hit some wires and killed himself and his student. Had mid-airs, and really a very safe record compared to how much they were doing.
Right. Okay. So you go on now to Fort Rucker for the next stage.
Yeah, when I finished up at Fort Wolters, I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and started different phases of training, more sophisticated navigation and more maintenance training and more different maneuvers and blah, 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 blah. And transitioned into the Huey. I flew old H-19 Chickasaws. That's another piece of junk, World War II stuff. You know, this heavy iron wouldn't all lift itself off the ground, but that's what we trained in. And then I went over into Huey's, which is state of the art then. And always a accident looking for a place to happen. But I was flying the Hueys, and we had instrument flight training, a lot of stuff, navigation, formations, organizational things, heavy on maintenance, meteorology. I mean, just lots of stuff. And you got cracked out of there, went straight to Vietnam. You knew that. And this was kind of frightening. I now had 3 babies.
Okay.
My little baby girl was born in February of '64, right after I reenlisted. And in September of '65, my youngest boy was born. And I graduated in December. But before I graduated, the class ahead of me, you knew these guys because boy, you talk about harassment. They were on you. You always lose. You never win. You had to run everywhere you went. And they'd say, "Whoa, candidate." And if you stopped, "Sir, candidate Ramon, yes, sir." They come over and say, "Are you a mule?" Only mules stop when you holler, "Whoa." So they chew you out for being a mule or stupid mule. The next guy you run by, he'd holler, "Whoa," and you just keep running, and he'd halt you. He said, "Sir, what's wrong with you? You stupid or something?" Even the mule knows to stop when you say, "Whoa." You don't know that? But you got to know these guys. And the harassment eased up when you got near the end. Not a whole lot, but it did some. But you knew these guys. And they put rosters up on the bulletin board with all their names on it. As they were killed, they drew a red line through their name. And you start to see the entire rosters disappear. And you knew that's where you were going. I went to Texarkana. I bought a 4-bedroom brick house with a chain link fence and a 1-acre lot. Payments were $106 a month. I had no idea how I was going to make that much payment. But I knew it was great possibility that I would be killed. And I wanted my children and my wife to have a home.
Okay.
Well, I didn't get killed, and I got a battlefield commission to lieutenant, which is a pay raise, exactly what my house payment was.
All right. So when you become a helicopter pilot, then you become a warrant officer?
Yes, you get commissioned as a warrant officer, and they give you your wings and your. Or tell you a funny story. My daddy was a sailor. They don't have sergeants in the Navy; they have chief petty officers.
Yeah.
But from my uncles and grandpas and stuff, he knew that a sergeant was a pretty important person. Well, as luck would have it, I was a specialist. I was an E4 and E5, but I didn't have the hard stripes. And I was always telling my daddy when I was home on labor, son, boy, I sure would like to make sergeant, be a sergeant. My daddy nodded his head, he's non-military. And so I went to flight school. I became a warrant officer. That's way higher than a sergeant. And my daddy, bless his heart, he came to my graduation, Fort Rucker. So I was late for the damn ceremony. You get thrown out from that. But my wife and my mother and the commander, the commandant, he liked me. He knew where I was going. It wasn't my fault, but I was nervous. And so the commandant called me aside and commissioned me. And this and that and this and that. And my mother pinned my wings on my chest. Yeah. And my daddy and the commandant put my little warrant officer bars on, little epaulets. So they put the little warrant officer's nothing, he's just W1, but it's more important, way more. My daddy put his arm around me and he said, son, I bet you by God now they'll make you a sergeant. That was funny. But I sent my wife and my children to our new home in Texarkana, and I didn't have any leave to speak of, so I stayed at Fort Rucker, and my job was to fly these instrument helicopters, TH-13Ts. The military has a policy where you try to keep the seals wet. You fly these engines and transmissions, stuff, servos, and keep them going every 7 days. You get them wet, So I had a fleet of these observation helicopters that were turned into instrument ships, and I got down and fly those all day long, and that was paid for my room and board, I guess. And so finally they let me go home, I think right before Christmas. And I got to spend 2 or 3 weeks with my wife and my babies before going to Vietnam.
All right.
And I knew that all these guys were going and getting killed. And they wiped out my class. They just wiped them out. But there was four of us left. And one died in a training accident hitting these wires. And we went back to Vietnam. Another one was killed flying Chinooks. And myself and another one were 2 out of the bunch. I think we started off with 87, but
All right.
it was a high attrition rate.
Okay. Now, how did they get you to Vietnam?
Huh?
How did they get you to Vietnam?
How did they get me?
To Vietnam.
Well, my family took me to the airport in Dallas, DFW. I flew to, I think San Francisco,
Okay.
and had a night there. Met up with a Green Beret, young lieutenant. He and I kind of like pals, so we went out to the bar, in our uniform. And the entertainers sang songs to us, kind of like, One of the songs they sang was "Peeping and Hiding, Slipping in the Slide." You remember that? And the next day we went back, and it was just, like this barracks and that bed and your duffel bag and all that stuff, and boarded a Northwest Orient flight. Flew to Japan, stopped in Japan for about 45 minutes, and then flew on into, I flew into Ton Son Nhut, Saigon.
Okay. So when did you arrive in South Vietnam?
God, it was, I don't really remember. January 66.
Okay.
I'll have to check my records, but it wasn't long after Christmas, I'll tell you that. Might have been earlier than early part of January, 66.
Okay. All right. Okay. And what was your first impression of Vietnam?
Coming in out of altitude, I was looking around and I could see tracers going to the ground. And you could see forever, up in the, I could see explosions across the artillery barrages and stuff, explosions. And I said, oh crap, but it was spread out, way spread out. So then we come in and we land at Ton Son Nhut. And when you get off the airplane, first thing that hits you is the odor. Rotten fish and, just feces, and it stinks. And a lot of fumes and gasoline, diesel and stuff, just stinks. It was hot, it was sticky, and I got an appointment there called, I forgot what, Camp Alpha, about where they took us into this little city of barbed wire and tin, sandbags. That was a funny feeling. You stuck out like a sore thumb. You had on brand new fatigues, brand new boots, and you looked like a new penny. They put you back in this area back there, and here's all the guys that are leaving. The dark tan, faded clothes, and they got that 1,000-yard stare. They're not friendly. They don't want friends, because friends get killed. And you mix in with those guys. And you're like a little puppy peeing on their shoes, you're trying to get in there with them. And most of them are real quiet, real stoic, they have no advice to offer. And that was funny, that was a strange feeling. So you stayed there at Camp Zama while they assign you to a combat unit. So I was there for about 2 days. And then they told me to report to the helipad that they were coming to pick me up, my unit. It was a 68th Assault Helicopter Company. Tough outfit. And I got on the back of that Huey, and we took off. And the door gunner pulled back his bolt on his machine gun, and the crew chief, and I'm looking through the cockpit, and there we go. And now we're at, like 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, and I could see the rice paddies, and so it was an eye-opener. It was a lot of experience there, just getting there.
Now, was this company attached to a specific division, or just part of was this a helicopter company? Was it part of a larger aviation unit?
Sure, yes. We belong to the 145th Combat Aviation Battalion. They belong to the 12th Group, and they belong to the 1st Combat Aviation Brigade. A brigade is something they put together out of necessity to meet a need.
Right.
So the 1st Aviation Brigade was essentially a bunch of red-headed stepchildren that nobody loved, So you were used to go here, to go there, to go there. That's why I served with so many good combat units. I served with all of them. 1st Infantry, 4th Infantry, 9th Infantry, 25th Infantry, 196th Light Infantry Brigade, 173rd Airborne, 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne. Wherever they needed a rental soldier, that's where they put me,
Right.
And we went up as far as the Battle of Bong Song, which was a son of a gun. That was in January '66, and it was Battle of Bong Song was hand to hand, and you were trying to support your troops. You couldn't deliver ammunition when they were like this. You know, you had to check ID cards before you did anything. You know, and so that was an eye opener. But I was young and dumb. And we did combat assaults all day long, every day, nonstop. And the first couple of combat assaults just terrified me, paralyzed me. Unbelievable stuff they did. You're going to, and it looks like, if it's early dawn, it looks like a spider web of tracers, and you're flying right through it. Of course, there's depth in there. Mm-hmm. But you hear people receiving fire, mayday calls, people going down, helicopters crashing and burning, and men getting shot to death right out in front of you on the LZ. Sometimes you were successful, sometimes you had to pull them out. And it was just like that. And I didn't fly. I sat there, mm-hmm. I was a sandbag, you know. And in case my pilot got killed, right. I could fly it out. And I had the unwelcome privilege of looking. My aircraft commander had his hands full. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was, helicopters everywhere, and stumps and stuff, and you don't want to land on dead guys. And so my aircraft commander was busy, as I was later on. Mm-hmm. But now it's sitting there, picking my nose, looking at all this stuff. So you get to see all the stuff you don't need to see.
Okay. How long did it take to adjust to that?
I'd say 2 or 3 months. It varies. Mm-hmm. You can only get so scared. You can only get so, and then you start to numb. What I did is I reached a plateau. I very painfully I accepted the fact that I was going to die. Mm-hmm. Period. There ain't no way you could survive this crap. So I took my family pictures, threw them in a trash can. I'll never see them again. I became a zombie. I became a robot, mechanical, and highly efficient. And it was painful. After about 2 or 3 months, then you get where, hell, you don't care. You're pretty good pilot. Mm-hmm. Up until the end, and then you got about 2 months left or a month left, you start getting scared again, like you're not going to make it to the end of the tunnel. But the middle of your tour, you seem like you do better. But at the beginning, it's hell. At the end, it's hell.
Okay. So how long was it before you started to actually fly? I mean, to be the pilot?
I started flying the first day.
Yeah, but I mean, but piloting your own?
Aircraft commander?
Yeah. Don't
remember. It was, I was in that process. I was flying Slicks. Slicks are the UH-1D models that carried the troops into battle. Right. Hauled out the dead and wounded, took in water and ammo and stuff and things. So I was in the Slick platoon. I got tired of getting shot all to hell and not shooting back. Mm-hmm. And my buddies were in the gun platoon. So I asked my commanding officer if I could go to the gun platoon. He said, well, I'll think about it when the opening comes. So they put me in the gun platoon. So then I started flying gunships, and I provide rockets and machine gun fire around the LZ while my buddies went in and out,
Right. Now, at this point, were you aircraft commander? Or?
Oh, yeah. But before that, like I said, I was in my company doing mm-hmm. these things. The United States Navy had what they call the brown water Navy. These are your PBRs and your rag boats and river rats, they call them. And these guys were working the Runsack Swamp. treacherous swamp. They call it the Forest of Assassins. It's the Devil's Swamp. It was horrible. These PBRs were out there. They get in deep trouble. They had to call for a helicopter, a gunship. God, that's like, takes forever. Every second is precious. So the Navy decided that that this naval operation should have its own in-house helicopters. The Navy, the finest pilots in the world, didn't know how to fly Hueys. They flew other stuff. So I was selected as one of the 8 Army pilots to go down there and fly their combat missions to support these PBRs and rag boats and stuff. SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2. So I was sent down there to do that. And here comes all these Navy pilots. They get trained and dispersed and stuff like that to pick up on it. Not only how to fly the helicopter, but how to fly it well, how to do combat tactics and strategies, and of course all the maintenance that goes with it and all that stuff. So I was down there for a little while, but I was a aircraft commander down there, and you just, whenever your boss thinks you're smart enough to get out and come home again, that's when they make an aircraft commander. But we had a turnover, Jim. We had boys killed, so we had new guys all the time. So if you lived long enough, you became an aircraft commander because you had the experience.
Okay. Now, when you were with the Navy, where were you based?
Well, I was at a R&R center called Vung Tau. Beautiful place, and it was pretty peaceful, pretty quiet, I had a shower. I spent the day there, and at the night I would fly out into the Runsack to a place called Na Bay, which is the worst place on earth. It was incredible, but it was right at the Longtown Soy-Rat River in the middle of the mosquitoes are so bad you open your eyes and they fill with mosquitoes. Open your mouth, they fill with mosquitoes. Dead people floating down the river. Rats. It was not good. Pythons. It was not good. But that's where I was. I was out of Na Bay, and we flew at night. Leaving Vung Tau late afternoon was my daytime flying, and I'd sink sandpans and do a little combat target opportunity. But when we got to Na Bay, put the ship down, fully armed. There's quite a checklist, quite a procedure to start a helicopter. Circuit breaker this, switch that, do this, throttle this, quite a thing. Same thing with the shutdown. But when we shut down at Na Bay, the only thing we shut down was the master switch. And I guarantee you, when you called me on the radio, I'd be on my way in 5 minutes. I was turning up the turbine and getting everything, and door gunners on, and rocket pods connected. I mean, out the door we went, because it was critical. It was every minute, every second counted. And it wasn't bad. Here you are in the middle of the river. Here's the tree line. I got tracers going from the tree line out towards you, or got you shooting at them, showing me where they are on the riverbank. So I'd go down and I'd just mow grass on the riverbanks. I mean, I'd put some stuff in there, rockets and machine gun fire. So we were pretty efficient. But you out there floating around in that little rubber ducky boat, boy, you were highly vulnerable, and you know, a lot of guys got hurt. Well, I was honored by the Seawolf Association. I was a guest speaker in 2012, and it's kind of funny. I was an old guy. I was 23, 24, so I was an old guy. And I was a mentor or school marm, they call me, you know, instructor and teacher. I wore this green flight suit, and they called me Granny in the green gown. But they loved me, and I loved them. And these Seawolf guys, they went on to be the Navy's most decorated, most honored aviation combat assault unit in their history. So they took off where I left off, and boy, they went. And they had a lot to do with that pre-Tet offensive stuff. The bad guys were down there in our part of real estate, and that's where they were gearing up for the Tet offensive was planned by the communists. And so we were down there messing around, stumbling over things and finding things and trying to prevent things and discovering things. And when I left the SEALs, I went with the 5th Special Forces, and that's what we did up around Tay Den to West Song Bay, Cal Song Bay. It's look for bunkers, look for ammunition caches and stuff. So that's what all my effort was about, was that pre-68 preparation. Junction City was a huge helicopter operation. And I was leaving I was working up until that started to kick off, and then I left to come home. Got my tail rotor shot my last day flying. I flew my last day.
Okay.
Back early on, they'd give you 30 days at the end of your tour. You didn't fly. You work around the company area, do something, But I flew the very last day.
Now, did that helicopter crash, or did you get back to base?
Oh, it wasn't bad. I shot a hole through the blade.
Okay.
You got a real high frequency buzz in the pedals, and your danger of your blade coming off. If your tail rotor comes off, you start spinning. That's not good, because that blade creates a lot of torque. Fuselage wants to go counter that and catch up with it. So they put that tail rotor out there to stabilize it so you can handle it. So if you lose that, you're in deep trouble. If you lose the tail rotor, you're in deep trouble anyway. If you lose the gearbox, if it falls off, you're dead, because you do this and you can't stop. But I took a bullet hole through my tail rotor, and this is funny too. I had received a direct commission. So enlisted men and warrant officers can move from one assignment to the next without orders, printed orders. A commissioned officer has to have printed orders in his hand. So I got extended beyond my DEROS about 6 weeks. Oh, that was terrible. I sweated every day to my DEROS, then I got there and realized I got to wait on these damn orders. Well, I was out flying, and they called me and said they had my orders. So I looked at my aircraft commander, or I had an aircraft commander. I looked at him and said, well, he said, Ed, if you leave, I'll have to shut the ship down. If you'll stay with me, we can do about 2 more hours worth of work, and I'll take you back. And I said, okay, like pulling teeth. But my captain was a really, really good guy. And I was a brand new second lieutenant, so I wanted to be a good guy too. So we finished out the day. Well, another guy that got commissioned with me was a really good friend. He was a punk kid just like me, and he was held up waiting for orders in my same outfit. So he and I were kind of like sweating it out every day. So I got my orders, and he was out there jacking around in combat. And Major Droder, Harry Droder was our commanding officer then. He goes in to see Major Droder, and Major Droder sees him coming to the door and says, "No, you're not going to quit flying. You're going to keep flying." You know, he didn't have his orders in this. And they had, right after we left, he had taken Al had gone to take a shower to Shower Point. And this was just big laterite strip, and they had all kinds of goods for Junction City, ammo, you name it, they had stacked out there and stuff. And Al had gone over to this little shower point to take a shower. You took a shower when you got a chance, you know. And he was walking back from the shower. Al was skinny as a broomstick. I mean, he was a little skinny guy. He was walking back and wrapped in a towel, and mortar started falling on the laterite. And Al was too far from the damn bunkers, so he jumped in this ditch. And the mortars were raining down, and I guess Major Trotter thought that's what scared the crap out of him, and he wanted to go home. He didn't want to fly anymore, but he walked in a tent, you know, and Major Trotter said, "No, you're going to keep flying." He said, "No, I'm not." He got hit in the ass with a piece of shrapnel. The flight surgeon grounded. To make it even worse, you know where his orders were? On the backside of mine.
Oh.
They didn't turn it over to see that he was on the backside. And I didn't know that. I didn't know all this was going on. So I got down, and the sergeant major, command sergeant major, just rolled out the red carpet for me. He ran me from here to there to turn in this, turn in my weapon, get my records, do this, blah, blah, get my duffel bag, and take me down to the processing center where you go home. And I was unexpected. Nobody expected me there. So I showed up at this Camp LBJ, I can't remember what they called it. And it was dark. It was night already. It looked like a chicken house with chicken wire in there, and they had this clerks back there. They were getting these guys booked on the flights to fly home. And I walked up there to that wire like that, and I looked at this. He was the lieutenant, and I was the lieutenant. I said, "Lieutenant so-and-so," I said, "what's the chance of getting a ride home?" You know? I said, "I've already been extended 6 weeks," you know, and I was kind of buddy up with him, you know. And he was pretty serious. It was a serious job. He looked at me, he said, "Well," he says, "stick around." He said, "I got either 4 or 6 enlisted men. They got sloppy drunk, and they weren't going to let them board the airplane." So their seats came up for grabs. And he said, "Yeah, I'll get you a seat." You know, I guess they reported that these 4 boys were drunks. And this guy pushed me from the back over the top of my shoulders. "I need a seat too." I looked back, and it was Al. Al Sharpest. Hell, he must have gone faster than I did, but he got up. My God, we wanted to go home. We were ready to go home. That's kind of funny, but at the end there, Jim, you get kind of like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. You know, that Buccabear's going to get me before I get to the border, you know. But it was something else. Something else.
Okay. Now, you get to go home then?
Huh?
You got to go home. You come back from Vietnam, you get to leave?
Yeah. I flew to Travis Air Force Base. I got there and had to go to, I think, Los Angeles. And I had to take a cab to go to the airport so I could catch my flight to DFW. And well, outside, the cab driver wouldn't let me in his cab because I had on my uniform. They had a shuttle bus, an old Army shuttle bus. So I went over and I sat on that damn bus for an hour or two, and then they drove me over to LAX, and I missed my flight. So I had to spend about 20 hours there at the terminal. Longer, you don't know how bad I wanted to be home. But I sat there and had all these flower children and weirdos and stuff, trying to sell me a diamond watch or making fun of me or crap like that. But I sat there, and when I got home, it was good to be home. Good old rural America,
Right. All right. Did your children know who you were?
Huh?
Did your children know who you were?
My little hometown was a little bitty town. Texarkana Gazette wrote me up for Distinguished Flying Cross and all that kind of crap, and helicopter pilots were heroes. I wasn't. I was wetting my pants all the time. I was scared to death, but if you were a helicopter pilot, you didn't buy a beer in a bar. If there was an infantryman in there, you didn't buy a beer, he bought you a beer. And blah, blah, blah. It was a helicopter war, highly publicized. And so I think that's why, as a helicopter pilot, I experienced this notoriety or stuff. But to be honest with you, Jim, I was just a scared young man. And funny, my biggest fear was that I wouldn't look good in front of my peers. And boy, they were outstanding. And I think they were doing the same thing, trying to be the best. And if I numb you out, you can function that way. You're not nervous, you're not screwed up, clear thinking, and okay, you go do it. But when you're scared out of your mind, boy, it is a tough job. And I was scared. I got into weather situations. I got shot down. I had maintenance problems, things like that. I had some pretty desperate missions to go pick up a LRP team or recon team and not know where the hell they were. 3 canopies of jungle and Charlie's right on them. And you got to get there. You got to be worth something. You got to get there. So that was always frightening, but I always managed to get there. We had what you call FM homing, where you key your mic on a Fox mic radio, and my little needle would point at you. I don't know how far you were out there, but my little needle would point at you. So I'd go through there, and you get down to the different canopies or sawgrass or this, that, and you'd say Mustang 2-4 or whatever my call sign was. You're over the top of us. So then I'd narrow my search down. And a lot of times we pull them out with jungle penetrators. That's a 200-foot long rope with a horse collar on it. Pull the guys up through there. And I pulled a guy up through the, it was like I broke his arms. He put his rifle across his arms and in a donut and broke his arms, but he didn't turn loose. We saved him. But it got really down to nip and tuck. I mean, in a lot of situations like that, a lot of young men are very fortunate to be alive because they miss about that much. And I think helicopters was the reason why. I hauled guys to the rear gym that looked like hamburger meat, and they lived. But it was getting there, the blood expanders and life-saving stuff that saved their lives. And I'm grateful that I got to do that. I'm grateful. I'm not proud of killing people. I'm proud of saving people's lives.
Right. Now, yesterday when we were talking, you talked about an incident where you got into trouble with your commander.
Oh, yeah.
Because you took too big a risk.
Yeah. Well, I had a thought process that if you call me, you're an RTO or you're whatever, and you got a guy down there that's dying or about to die, or if I go get you, I might get killed. Very likely I might. That's one side of it. If I don't go get you, you definitely will die. I couldn't, I couldn't turn them down. And I'm telling you, I did wet my pants. My tongue swelled up and filled my mouth out of fear. But by God, I went and got them.
So why did your commander have a problem?
Well, I was flying a gunship, not designed for extractions or medevacs and all that, but a damn old heavy gunship. And I was on this area. This RTO was pleading for somebody to come get this infantryman, young enlisted man, had sucking chest wound. He was going to expire. And there I was knocking around during the gunship, and this slick called and said, well, we'd like to help, but the situation's too hot. This other one called in and said, well, we'd like to help, but we can't wait around. We're low on fuel, and the situation has to improve. And I said to myself, just get out of the way. What I did is going in, I shot all my rockets, just exhausted my ammunition ordnance, which lightened me up a little bit, which wasn't enough, but it was. And I went in there and I picked up this grunt. It was an unbelievable challenge to take off out of that hole because of the heat but I got him out. Those two other crew members, those other 4 pilots, they reported me for being reckless.
Okay. All right. I'm going to pause right here. All right, so the other pilots basically turned you in, or they reported you.
They were good men. They were heroes. They did a lot of stuff. But they weren't as abandoned as I was. I'd given up my life. I was going to die. I might as well die looking good, They were practical men. My mission was successful. That's all that saved my bacon. But if my door gunner or crew chief or co-pilot, or even me, if we'd been badly wounded, it'd been different. If the helicopter would have sustained serious combat damage or even been shot down, bad poker hand, But they reported not to make me, not to hurt me, but to kind of straighten me up. So I went in front of my commanding officer. He was a wonderful man, and he began to chew my butt out. Like, I'm liable. I put these men's lives on the line. One thing I always did, Jim, is when I took on something like this, I'd ask my crew, hey, we got this guy down here, shot through the lungs. It's pretty hot. You guys want to go get him? And my enlisted men, and my co-pilots would always say, we're with you, sir. I'll tell you something. Those men were heroic too, maybe more heroic than me, because they were cognitive, they were thinking, and they were backing me up. But they could have said, well, should we, and they hem a haul around, and I would have come up with something different, But at any rate, I sit there, and I really didn't give a damn. I mean, I was going to die. Who cared? Court-martial. What are you going to do? Send me to Vietnam? So I sat there, and out of respect, I respected my commanding officer very much. I sat there while he told me what I already knew, but it made me think. It really did make me think about, well, boy, you sure put them guys in a tough situation. By the way, the man lived. Had a sucking chest wound, shot through his lungs. But I got him before he died, and we saved his life. But I was still pretty cocky. After the major, I was a warrant officer. After the major got through chewing my ass. I mean, chewing it out. Nice way. He, like a good commander would always say, what do you have to say for yourself? And I looked at him, and I said, well, sir, if it was you laying on that ground in the hot sun, that hot LZ, with the bullet through your lungs, and I come and pulled you out, would you be chewing my ass right now? That was really unfair of me, but by God, it was true. And he told me, he said, Mr. Ramon, get out of my sight. He ran me off. I'm sure that he had a respect for what I did, but I'm sure he had enough managerial thought to take care of his own men, take care of his mission, do it the right way. I was just a loose cannon on the deck, but I got chewed out a couple of times, and I did some things that should have been decorated for, but I got, my butt kicked for. So you can be too reckless. You can kill people in combat if you're a stupid lieutenant or a stupid captain or bad sergeant. You can cause harm trying to do good. But by the grace of God, I was blessed. I was okay.
Okay. Now, you told another story. You told me about having a CBS News reporter fly with you.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. The news media, if it bleeds, it leads, And I think it was Lowell Thomas in the news or CBS. I don't remember who it was, but it was big media. And they wanted to know about this Cobra. Cobra was pretty sophisticated, pretty new stuff. So they worked through the information office in different places, and they come up with this young reporter. They gave him permission to, what do they call that, a quit claim or something like that, release of liability or whatever. But they got the young man cleared to ride with me on a Cobra in hostile territory. Nice kid, very curious, good, smart boy. And I took him around and showed him the helicopter, and it was pretty sophisticated. We had 440 millimeter grenades, big bad boys. We had 72 rockets with 17-pound warheads. We had 8,000 rounds of linked 7.62 ammunition. Blah 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 blah. How fast it would go and what it would do, and it's only 36 inches wide. So it was a fighter plane, is what it was. And we got in, and since I was on camera and everything, I went by the numbers, but went to the checklist and why we did it that way, so that we wouldn't rely on memory. We wouldn't skip a circuit breaker or do anything wrong. Got turning up, had another slick over here with cameras on it, and they were going to film us, and they communicated with us a little bit. First thing you do when you take off is you make sure you don't fly into an artillery barrage somewhere. So I checked with all the artillery centers and found out where it was safe to go. We had 3 fire zones that were bad places. You could shoot in there anytime you wanted to. You didn't need to talk to nobody. You go in there, you see activity, it was enemy activity. So I got over on one of those, and I was going through my radios, and I came up with this outfit. They were pushing some bad guys into the canals or into so they had some bad guys. And I said, well, you need a Cobra strike? Or they said, oh yeah, I'm sure, I said, well, pop some smoke. and they did, and I identified their smoke, and bad guys are on this side, and they were on this side, so I went in there. Well, in a Cobra strike, the ones I liked, you take the aircraft straight nose up to about 3,000 feet. You need some altitude because, boy, you come down fast. Take it about 3,000 feet, zero out the airspeed, and you roll it over. And you end up nose down, and it's like dropping marbles in a coffee can. I mean, those rockets, you don't miss. It's a challenge to shoot rockets on trajectory, like shooting a basketball. You might be good or you might miss, but this was mass effective. And I was out there by myself. I didn't have a sister gunship. So we got into that, and I winged it over like that. And his voice started to break up. I don't know if it was G-forces or fear, but he said, "Captain Ramon, it seems like we're upside down." I said, "We are." We went through there. And then coming down, I mean, he's looking right at the target, and it don't take you long to go 3,000 feet. And just boom, 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 boom. And he was better than any sports announcer. He was announcing, what he saw down there. We came down, we came out, and we came under some intensive automatic weapons fire. We got the main body, but we didn't get, and you could hear the machine gun, the automatic weapons fire. But when you come out of that dive, boy, you were cooking. So we went climb back up, and the survivors of our attack, they were headed for the canals to get to these sampans so they escaped. So we went back and we destroyed all the sampans, and the good guys caught up with them, and I guess they took them as prisoners or killed them or whatever they did with them. But that was funny. That reporter, and just a while back, he contacted me, I guess by the social media or the internet, or what. He found me. I think he found me because of my book. And he called and asked me if I was so-and-so, and I said, yeah. Asked me if I could remember him. I said, well, yeah. And he asked me if we took off out of Longthorn North. I said, yeah. And it was him. It was this kid. He was thrilled. And he's a big shot, I guess, in film industry out in California somewhere. And had a nice talk. Small world, huh, Jim? But
Right.
that was funny. That was funny. I could tell you another story about another non-combatant, a dentist.
Okay.
Did I tell you about that? We had this guy, and we were in Von Chow, Sea Wolves, and we hung around there, and we were macho, we were tough. Most of these people were doctors and dentists and recreation R&R people. I mean, we were the combat guys that were there, small bunch. This dentist liked to hang out with us. We had a bar, he'd hang out with us. So he was macho, he was a good kid, but a dentist. And he wanted to go on one of our missions. So, okay, we were wanted to go take him into the swamp. But we did a lot of maintenance and stuff around there. And we had a radio jamming station there that was screwing with the Air Force cargo traffic in there. So we got together three ships, and we decided that we're going to triangulate. You get a bearing, you get a bearing, you get a bearing, and it'll all intersect, and that's where this bad guy would be. So we did that. Well, he went with me. And he's sitting over there in the co-pilot seat, in the gunner seat, and boy, he's proud of the peacock, he's a war hero, So we took off, and we found this it was a tile or stone structure. It was a little hard hut. And that's why they had the radio jamming equipment in there. So now the race was on to get to see who was the first guy to get there to blow it away. Well, I won that race too. And because it was a hard target, I thought I would do a salvo, hoping I hit it, which I was pretty good. But if I didn't hit it, that the other two ships would be there and they'd polish it off. But I wanted to get it. The Army then was in learning stage. We had rocket pods. We had shorter warheads. We had long warheads, short rocket pods, long rocket pods. If your warhead stuck out of the pod, when a rocket left the pod, these little folding fins would fling out. It would shear those fins off, and that rocket would go, wherever it wanted to go. And we killed some people doing that, learning that, back in research and development. Okay, well, that's not good, so they start coming out with the longer pods. Well, you could fire a short rocket from a long pod, that's okay. But my problem was, I had long pods, and had some short warheads. Ordnance we were disposing of or using on other stuff, but that's what I was loaded up with, was shorter warheads. When a helicopter comes hovering by you, they blow gravel. And the gravel was blown up in the pods, and it was locking the warheads in the pods. Well, here I come over this target. I got an intervalometer, and I'm going to fire all my rockets at one shot. To make. And we rolled in on the target like that. It had kind of about a pretty steep dive, not a plunging fire, but pretty steep. Looking at that thing, and I punched the rockets off, and all the rockets on my side left the tubes and went to the target. The rockets on his side stayed in the pod. Can you imagine the thrust? So here we're going like this, and then we turned sideways. That should have tore the tail boom off, but we turned sideways like that. The crew chief had a monkey strap. He ran out there and pulled the release, and he was actually jumping up and down and stomping on the pod outside the helicopter, but the force or thrust had kind of locked in there. Well, finally the pod came off, and he damn near fell out of the helicopter, but he had that strap, and that pod flew around and went down to there. But it scared the crap out of all of us. You can imagine that. And Dennis is over there. He was holding on to the console like that, and he was out of it. His hands were white. He didn't want to fly in helicopters no more. But that was fun. It scared the shit out. Well, it scared the shit out of me, but it scared him too, But there was humor and sick humor, but anytime you survive something, you feel okay,
Okay. Now, when you were not flying, how did you spend your time?
Getting drunk, sleeping, cleaning equipment, playing poker. Didn't have much free time.
Okay. Was the weather sometimes too bad to fly? Or
Yes, we flew anyway, but it got pretty dangerous in some visibility. Monsoon, we lost a couple of ships in a thunderstorm. The winds can get up to 600 knots, destroy helicopters, so you don't fly into thunderstorms. But we lost a couple of ships. There's also called a cloud with a rock in it. That's a mountain you don't see and I got into areas like that, and I didn't know if I was going to kiss a mountain or not, but I came out. I was flying out to this little valley, and I saw something sparkling. And I thought it was sunlight on the windshield of a vehicle. I looked down there and I was curious what was the vehicle down there. It was a Quad 50 and the aircraft gun out of Korea. Those suckers will shoot to 6,000, 7,000 feet. There I was in this valley, two mountains on both sides and clouds over the top. You better believe I punched into them clouds. Not knowing if I'd kiss a rock or not, but that Quad 50 wasn't going to get me. Or hopefully it wouldn't get me. But weather was a killer. We lost guys. A lot of people are killed in aviation accidents and combat because of what you call pilot error. For crying out loud. Your margin for error is like that. But if you screw up, you kill people. You kill yourself.
Okay. Now, you had trained originally as a medic. Did you use your medic training in Vietnam?
Maybe a soft bandage on a scratch.
Okay.
We got scratched all the time. I must have been shot 50 times, but no Purple Heart. No, just a scratch or cut, like like that. I got shot through the hand. That required some stitches and stuff. But we get guys that they get scratched. We had sometimes a severe onset of diarrhea. I knew what to do, how to help them out, get them some fluids and take care of them. But no, I wasn't. Then I went and got this, that Medal of Honor thing. I went and got this Arvin Ranger paratrooper. He had broken femurs, both of them, and bleeding badly. But I didn't have time to treat him. I had to get him out of there. And so I threw him over my shoulders and ran 200 meters to get him out. And when we got there, the crew chief and door gunner kind of pulled his, he was in deep trouble. But he lived, he survived. Okay. I don't know how well he healed, but.
Now, you mentioned a Medal of Honor. Have you been nominated for that?
I was decorated for picking up this paratrooper. And they gave me an air medal, which is nice. It's like a Bronze Star for valor. And I didn't even know I was going to get it. I didn't go in there for the medal. I went there to get this guy out. And a couple of weeks later, I got there called to go to this decoration ceremony. They gave me an air medal. Hell, I had 24 air medals, But it was nice, thought. And then about the last 25 years, a bunch of people who knew me and saw this decoration, including Major General Eisenhower, they thought that was a pretty weak deal, So they wanted to see if I could get the Medal of Honor. And they made a petition. They wrote up a citation. They did all this stuff. Fortunately, all this was documented by the other decoration, but the guy that wrote it up, I don't know who wrote it up, but the guy who wrote it up left out the crocodiles, he left out the automatic weapons fire, the fact that I had holes shot in my blouse and my trousers, and that I had to run 200 meters to get this guy. They left all that out. They just, that he did a good job. He saved this paratrooper's life, Some difficult flying and some danger. But anyway, they put all that together the day before 9/11. That's 18 years ago. General Eisenhower and Sergeant McCarthy and Sergeant Duke and Specialist Larry Carlisle. My co-pilot was alive then. And he submitted a sworn affidavit about the crocodiles and the bullet holes and incredible flying, getting out in little bitty holes so we could even get close to him. 200 meters is a long ways to a mangrove swamp. But I didn't, I was walking on water. I didn't, I was moving out. I was physically fit then.
Okay, so,
But they put all that together and they sent it to Senator Inhofe, a Republican senator. And Jim Inhofe had given me 51 decorations before that at a ballpark baseball. This is, dog and pony show time.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
he's a veteran. He's an advocate, and like most politicians, they want the veteran vote. But Jim, it was sent to Jim, to his chief of staff, and then to him. Never heard anything back. Nothing. After about 3 or 4 years, I inquired. They didn't know what was going on. Then I inquired again. It was supposed to be over here at the Department of the Army or Department of Defense, some damn place. Never heard from him again. So General Eisenhower, he's a friend. He got a little bit ticked off. So he's taken it on himself to write letters, put together things. And they've also now submitted it through a North Carolina congresswoman. She's an advocate for veterans, and of course she wants the veterans vote. She takes care of the veterans. And so they're hoping that she's a senator, and that they'll get this damn thing out of the trash can and either approve it or disapprove it.
Right.
I don't care if they approve it or disapprove it. Of course I want it approved, but if they disapprove it, I saved a life and I got decorated and I'm okay.
Okay.
I'd like for my granddaughter and my kids and my great-grandchildren. By the way, I'm expecting another great-grandchild. I just found that out. But I'd love for my family to have something to hold on to. I cherish my grandfathers and my great-grandfathers. They were Comanches and stuff, but I honor them as men that stood up for what they believed in.
Okay.
And I'd like for my little kids to think that of me. One reason why, Jim, is because I alienated my children and my loved ones, my family, because of really, really bad PTSD. I ran off everybody that loved me. I've come around now and I'm doing much better. But for 40 years it was bad news, broken glass. I had a hard life.
Great. Now let's circle back a little bit. First of all, explain about the crocodiles.
What?
The crocodiles.
Oh, the crocodiles, oh my God. When I went to get this guy, I found what you call a high-speed trail. And it went through an abandoned village. And there's all the rivers. So I ran down that trail. I was hooking them, which was better than coming back, but down this high-speed trail. I got to the river, I had to turn right and go about 40 meters down the river, and this paratrooper had both legs broken, femurs, and there was blood bleeding through his risers had fallen across a great old big tree stump, and his canopy was bouncing off the river. And I was afraid if that thing filled with water, they would drag him to his death, So I went slushing out there to the mud, about ankle deep, knee deep, which is hard walking. And I got him. And just as I got him, bullets started splashing water and mud up all around me. Bad guys were shooting at me from across the river. Well, there I am, wide open, kill zone. So I throw this paratrooper over my back, and I get back to the shore, to the bank. Well, I can't run down the bank to get to that high-speed trail, because they'd blow me down before I got there. So I plunged right into the mangroves. And they have a Crocodilus porosus. They call them salties, man-eaters, sea-going crocodiles. These are the big boys that you see in Australia.
Yep.
Ran right through the middle of them, everywhere. They would have killed me probably, or eaten me, both of us. But the village was not abandoned. It wasn't abandoned. They had an ambush set up there. I ran right through that ambush, and they had discipline. They held their fire. But when these guys across the river opened up on me, then they opened up on me, and they were close. They had leaves, limbs, things falling down all around me, but that spooked the crocodiles. So I didn't get, I wouldn't made it into lunch. Got back to the chopper, and Ollie Staten was my aircraft commander and co-pilot. We alternated. And Ollie was there waiting on me. He didn't take off to leave me. And my crew chief, and we put that pitiful Arvin soldier never made a sound. You know, I was running with, when I laid him on the deck, he started to scream. I guess intervals of shock or something, but it allowed him to, but he started screaming. The crew chief was helping, and we saved him. He lived. Well, that's a biggie. You know, anytime you save a human life, that's kind of a biggie. But what the Special Forces advisors were really happy about was I sprung this damn ambush that their guys were going to walk into, and they would have sustained serious casualties, you know, wounds and maybe killed in action, but they would have been a bummer if those Rangers had walked into the village. It was a horseshoe ambush. They would have fished in a barrel. But I sprung it, so they dealt with it differently. But that, I think that's the big thing, that they were the Medal of Honor time. They wasn't a, I wasn't heroic. I didn't know it was going to be that bad. If I'd known it, I'd probably left town, you know.
Okay, let's go back in your story. So we've kind of gotten you through your first tour in Vietnam, where you talked about that, and you come back home to the States. What assignment do you get when you get home?
What did I do?
Yeah.
First tour. I went to Fort Eustis, Virginia, and they had a job there as a secretary of the Aviation Administration. It was a major's job. I was a second lieutenant, but I had the years of. So they gave me that job. I was at Fort Army Airfield, and Colonel Hill and Major Moffett and a couple of really wonderful guys. One of my co-pilots from Seawolf was there. So I stayed there a little while. And then I wanted to move my wife and my children closer to their family. And they were in Georgia. So I asked for and got a transfer to Fort Stewart, Georgia, Camp Swampy, bad as Vietnam. But I went there, and I became part of I think it was 267th Aviation Battalion, and we trained pathfinders, how to get helicopters in to LCs and just stuff like that. So I did that, and made first lieutenant, and I was already screwed up. PTSD was getting me. I was not an officer and a gentleman. I was drinking, fist fighting, wild as a hare. So I decided I better go back to Vietnam. And I had a guilt, unreasonable guilt. My friends died, and I chickened out. So I went to Cobra School, and then I went to Vietnam. And wasn't there too long. Broke my back. Made it back to Camp Samba, Japan. Told I'd never walk again. And when I was told that I would never walk again, I felt like I had paid my debt for killing children. I felt like I paid my debt. But I was able to walk again. And I've come late years because of people who care about Vietnam War. People like you. What was it all about? What did it do to our young men and women? And my discipline now is psychology. I counsel veterans. I do really well at it. I help a lot of them. Had a few commit suicide. That's always sad. My little brother committed suicide. But I think what you're doing, Jim, is terribly important as a historian. And, you know, what was it? Henry Steele Commager said, if you don't know history, you're going to relive it. Well, we're reliving that now.
Yeah, no way. Now, did the back injury, did that end your military career? When you broke your back, did that end your military career?
No, it screwed it up. It wasn't a broken back. It was compressions, and I tore a bunch of short muscles, and a lot of pressure on the sciatic nerve. Not a big tumor, but that big. The tumor dissolved, and my feeling came back, and I rehabbed back to where I could walk, where I could run, where I could stand, so I was okay. But I had residuals. I think what caused me to get out was PTSD. I wasn't happy. I was mercurial. I was the best officer you'd ever find, and I was probably the sorriest you'd ever find. You can't be that way. So I had a lot of accolades. I was a battalion commander as a captain. I was Mamie Eisenhower's escort officer, President Agnew's escort officer. Had a wash tub full of medals. I was a good, on the surface, a good boy, but beneath it, I was falling apart.
Okay, so explain what you were doing with Vice President Agnew.
Find out where toilets were and opening doors. I was a pretty low-level peon, but I was a captain. And his wife was real sweet. And we'd go into these, when they come to a military base like that, I remember giving him the technical aspects of a facsimile assimilator. You know what that is? The tube that rotated, it had needles on it, and that's the way you transmitted faxes back in the old days.
Okay.
So I showed him how the thing worked, and he was interested. Spire Agnew was a good guy. He was a crook, but they all were. But he was an honest crook, if you know what I mean. If you ask him, he said, yeah, you know. His little wife was very sweet. I hate to say this about Mamie Eisenhower. She was precious, but she was a precious little drunk. And I guess that's because of all of her life. But she drank a little bit too much. She's precious. My main thing for her was finding the bathrooms and looking out for her.
Now, is this what you were doing after you got back from Vietnam?
Pardon me?
Were you doing this after you finished
Yes,
in Vietnam?
it's
Yeah.
after Vietnam.
Now, and when did you actually leave the service?
When did I actually leave?
Yeah.
April 15th, 1973. And I resigned my commission April 15th, 1975. So I was essentially a soldier for, what,
Well, from 61 to,
14, 15 years.
yeah.
But I was angry when I got out. They had a reduction in force. All the enlisted men wanted out and they got out. So they were now top heavy in mid-management or company grade officers. So they started releasing them involuntarily. They'd riff them, reduction in force they call it. So they let out all these thousands of captains, and I was in there, still in there. And when they riffed me, they came down with a rift order. I was the only guy on it. Bottom of the pile. But hell, I was an instrument instructor. I was dual rated. I was blah, blah, blah. Cobra qualified, all that. But they ripped me. Gave me $15,000. Thanked me, threw me out the gate. And I was angry. And about, it wasn't long, but maybe a year, they screwed up like the government usually does. They overreacted. They threw out too many helicopter pilots. You know what it costs to train a helicopter pilot? They have to have $1,500, $2,000 before they're worth a damn. You know what it takes to train a Cobra pilot, a test pilot? I was all of these things. So I was living in Hurst, Texas, and got a call from Fort Hood. They wanted to bring me back on as a Cobra pilot for the Cav outfits that were there, armor people. I think it was 4th Infantry, I'm not sure, 4th. But they wanted me there as a Cobra pilot to, told me they'd make me a major, because I was almost a major when I got out. And I said, well, how long, they said, well, we'll guarantee you 6 months. I said, no. I said, I need 6 years in retirement, or you can forget it. I said, when all the 4S and all the women and you exhausted everything, you can't recruit anybody. I said, I might go then, but not until then. I was a smart ass, but I cut my nose off, spite my face. I probably would have, if I'd gone back on active duty, the way things turned out, the Mideast wars, I probably would have been sticking around as a Cobra driver, if not a aviation commander, for probably a pretty good while, if I behaved myself. But I was not a good boy then. Today I'd make a wonderful commander. Be an old geezer and being smart, being practical, being good, being a good guy. But back then I was a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, and you went down further, and you went down more after that, and then eventually got yourself all the way back up again. Right?
I fell apart in 1984. I ended up in a fetal position on the floor of a VA hospital. I lost it all. I lost it all. But I screwed up with people up until 1984, divorced wives and quit jobs and, but I started coming back in 1984. And 1990 I was doing better. In the late 90s I was doing much better. Meantime, I went to graduate school, wrote a book, and tried my very best to be a good guy. And I became one. I think I did.
Okay. Say a little bit about the book. It's an unusual book.
Oh, this book?
Yes.
Oh, it's a compression of thought. It's in poetry. It has a Christian scripture, a secular wisdom scripture, a poem, and then a prose epilogue explaining what the PT is, what that is about. Some stories I bear are always there for anyone to see. The few who care will often stare and ask how they came to be. This scar you see below my knee came from a bursting shell. This one here beside my ear, a sniper shot placed well. Though there's another I know that I can't show because it's hidden so deep inside. I guess it's true, it has something to do with all my friends that have died. But nevertheless, I must confess, this scar burdens me with strife. I ask and cry, I still wonder why we wasted such precious life. This scar I keep buried very deep, and it's not from a bullet hole, but it will always seep and trouble my sleep because it stretches across my soul. Okay, that's a poem. you go to the epilogue, and it talks about the physiology of a gunshot wound or shrapnel wound. You get a hole punched in you, start to bleed, thermoplastin, you coagulate, start the bleeding, here comes the white blood cells, and you start healing. If you got blood running down your arm or your leg or your face, here comes your buddy to help you. Here comes the doctors, the hospital, you know, you got external help. But I'll tell you this, when you get scarred across your soul, you're often by yourself. Often you try to hide it. Big boys don't cry, you know, and it gets worse and worse. And it never, ever heals. You have to learn how to cope with it, how to deal with it. So that's what it's like. It's a couple of sayings, a poem, and an epilogue, and it goes through quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Talks about a corpsman, talks about a chaplain that got killed on the battlefield. Talks about army nurses that were there, little children starving, killing children, mortar attacks, artillery barrages and stuff. So it's my picture of this, of what the war was. And I've been blessed. I've had grandmothers and wives and daughters and children and fathers and come up to me crying because they said their book told me who their father was, or their son, or their brother. They didn't know who he was. They knew he was screwed up, but they didn't know what was going on. But when they read their book, they saw him. And I gave him back to them. And of course, you need that help, you need support. When you need help the most, that's when you seem to alienate it or run it off.
Yeah.
So I learned that the hard way, and I don't want other youngsters today to learn it the hard way. Sit down. You have to heal yourself. We will help you with medication if you need it. If you don't need it, leave the medication alone. Leave the booze and the drugs alone. Listen to good counsel. Talk to groups. Visit with other people who've shared common experience. Work your way out. And you'll be able to hobble. You may not be able to run, but you'll be able to walk the rest of your life. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. But it all makes for a pretty remarkable story. So thank you very much for taking the time to share it.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate what you're doing. It means something to the kids ahead of us.